getting America back on track. Bill Martinez live.
6 minutes after the top of the hour. Great to have you with us. And we're going to have a special hour with my good friend Bill Salas as we talk about prophecy and the signs of the times. Repeatedly, I'm asked, Bill, are these the last of the last days? I mean, there's wars, there's rumored wars, there's plagues, these things that we've been warned about. The other thing that I notice, people are looking up more these days. And I say that's a good sign because it's an instinctive part of our humanity that causes us to look up for answers. You know, we're not looking to Washington, D.C. We're not looking to Russia or China. We're looking up. People of faith, people who have a connection with God are looking up because, as Jesus said, there would be that time that our redemption would draw nigh. And that's why I believe that people are looking up and they're asking this question. Bill Salas, even Billy Graham, Dr. Billy Graham, before he passed, I share this with people because I thought this was quite profound, and having enjoyed the honor of being part of the Billy Graham Evangelistic Association in the mid-'80s when he was in Los Angeles. Billy Graham was the evangelist. I don't think I ever heard him talk about the prophetic. This was not what his mantle had anything to do with his promise that he made to God. When he made that promise, when he came into relationship with Christ, said, look, if you do this, if this is of you, then give me a voice to lead others to you. That was his prayer, and God answered it. And so I thought it was very profound that Billy Graham, before he passed, when he was asked about these times, and asked specifically, Dr. Graham, are these the last days? And he said, indeed, these are the last of the last days. Right, Bill?
Well, they are. And, Billy Graham, a great evangelist, but he's also understands the Bible thoroughly. And time of the end, latter days, latter years, this is a very big theme in the Bible. I mean, almost a third of the Bible is devoted to biblical prophecy. And, there's several hundred prophecies yet to find fulfillment that are reserved for the time of the end, the latter years. And we presently there's two really marquee events we should be looking for during the church age. One has already passed, and that was the rebirth of Israel in 1948. Many prophecies were fulfilled when the Jews came out of the diaspora after 1,878 years of being scattered about the nations of the world. But the other one, too, that I find parallels with Russia's invasion of Ukraine, the other marquee event, the one in which God is going to make his holy name known to the nations of the world, is in Ezekiel 38. And just a couple parallels I would share with your listeners to realize, hey, we really are on the threshold of the last days, and this invasion of Ukraine might so indicate that. It says that in Ezekiel 38, which is a prophecy that some of your listeners may be familiar with, but it's a very important prophecy to look at right now. The details are very well spelled out throughout 52 verses between Ezekiel 38 and 39. It talks about in the latter years that Israel will be brought back into the nations of the world. Well, that happened in 1948. Mm-hmm. And goes on to say this, talking about a Russian-led coalition that would include Turkey and Iran and 9 other members in the coalition. It says, thus says the Lord God, in that day it shall come to pass that thoughts will arise in your mind, speaking about the mind of a Russian leader. Some people even think this Russian leader, if we're this deep into the last days, could be Vladimir Putin. Now, I'm not going to go on a limb and say that, but keep this in mind when I read the rest of this to you. That thoughts will arise in your mind, and you will make an evil plan. And this evil plan you will say, I will go up against the land of unwalled villages, I will go to a peaceful people who dwell safely, all of them dwelling without walls, bars, nor gates, to take plunder and to take booty, to stretch out your hand against the waste places that are again inhabited, against the people gathered from the nations. Now, the point I'm trying to make here is that Russia has gone into Ukraine, and with this similar thoughts, this evil plan, that sort of thing. A lot of people don't realize that Ukraine is the breadbasket of Europe. It's the second largest in gas reserves in Europe. A lot of those are untapped. They're the fifth largest producer of corn. Russia and Ukraine together provide about a fourth of the world's wheat production. And Ukraine also has oil, but also fertilizing petrochemicals. Mm-hmm. So, Russia we're seeing this parallel, and it says this will happen in the latter years.
Bill, let me interrupt you here just a second, if you don't mind. I want you to address the spiritual aspect of Ukraine, too. I mean, they're not a bunch of heathens. I mean, you've got a majority of the Ukrainians are people of faith, are they not?
Well, I'll be honest with you, Bill, I'm not that familiar with their whole religious system over there. I think
Okay.
there's quite a few of them are. There's actually quite a few Jews over there as well, which is one of the reasons Israel is concerned about what's going on there. But, I mean, this, to me, the thing is that we've got a Russian leader. Now, of course, the Ezekiel 38 prophecy is not talking about Ukraine. The Ezekiel 38 prophecy is talking about they're going to come against Israel for plunder and booty. The point I'm trying to make is it's a Russian leader. It's in the end times. It's an invasion with evil thoughts, an evil plan to invade a country for plunder and booty. And we're seeing that march ahead going on with Ukraine, with Vladimir Putin's doing. And
there are parallels there.
Right. The world is on edge with respect to what's going to happen next. Will there be a nuclear war coming out of this thing?
Now, when we talk about the signs of the end times, these are, as Jesus said in explaining to the apostles, that these are indicators, right? And may not be the actual end time sign, but this is evidence that says this is the model of how eventually we will get there. We will get to that chapter of Revelations, right? Is that
right.
fair?
Well, there's a lot of stepping stones along the way. Like I said, there's several hundred of prophecies that have yet to find fulfillment. I'm just bringing out two of the real big ones. One has found fulfillment, which tells us that's when the end times line started ticking. The end times clock started ticking was 1948. Now the Jews are back in the land. That we're racing toward this other really big event I was just talking about in Ezekiel 38. It says in that particular war, it's an invasion. Russia's going to come with its hordes, Iran, Turkey, a lot of coalition members with them. And God's going to stop it, not the American troops, not Israel's defense forces. There'll be an earthquake, fire and brimstone, flooding rains, those stuff. That'll be supernatural, the point being. And it says when that's done, and the world's going to know that that was a supernatural defeat. It says, I will make my holy name known in the midst of my people Israel. The nation shall know that I'm the Lord, the Holy One in Israel. The point being is that God is going to give the world official notice in Ezekiel 38. That's why I'm watching this invasion of Ukraine with bated breath, going, how close is Israel next? Is Russia coming after Israel next?
Exactly. Yeah. Well, it's taken Russia a bit of time to choose Ukraine, but we're seeing a pattern here, and I guess that's what you're talking about. And you and I have had this discussion, Bill, almost from day one, when Israel was brought back and again in a day became a nation again. You and I talked about this and said it is if God's prophetic clock, the hour hand of God's prophetic clock was set at that moment. And what we have been experiencing now are minutes and seconds, whirling around. I just see this whirling around the prophetic clock, leading us to the final event that we all are expecting and are eager to see, maybe in our lifetime, Bill Salas. We've got to go to a quick break. He's the best-selling author of The Millennium Prophecies and the New Jerusalem. Renowned prophecy expert Bill Salas continues with us. Bill, as we were wrapping up the first segment, I made reference to the end. And a lot of people may misunderstand in terms of what the end is. We know God knows the beginning from the end from the beginning. He says such, which validates that he is God. There's none other. I mean, what other God tells you what's going to happen and actually happens? As you mentioned, 2/3 of prophecy, God said beforehand is going to happen. He's bat 1,000%. So, and you've heard me ask this question before, rhetorically. What are the chances that God will continue to bat 1,000% on the remaining third of prophetic events that are before us?
Well, there are 1,000% chance that he's going to bat 1,000.
Right.
And you talk about the end. It's interesting. You said before the break, the end that we're looking forward to. Well, the end of the church age is when Jesus comes in what's called the Rapture event. But there's also the end of the tribulation period, the 7-year tribulation period, the worst 7 years on the world's history, which happens after the rapture. And Jesus comes in the second coming, and he comes down and he rescues the Jewish remnant that's in exile, and he battles, has the battle of Armageddon against the Antichrist. But then after that, there's a restored earth. So that's not even the end. There's the millennium that happens, 1,000 years where Christ reigns on the earth. But the thing that we're hoping for here in the church, and we're seeing with all the signs of the times, as active as they are, that we're deep in the end times, is that Jesus is going to come into the clouds and get his church, figuratively his bride, and catch her up into the clouds. There's a couple of important verses that tell us that it says that we're going to be saved from the wrath that's going to come in the tribulation. That's in Romans 5, verses 8 and 9. We're told that God did not appoint the church to the wrath that's going to come, and that's in 1 Thessalonians 5, 7 through 10. We're told in 1 Thessalonians 1 through 10, 1 and 10, 1:10, Jesus who delivers us from the wrath to come. So he's going to deliver us. He's going to save us from it. We're not appointed to it. We're going to be kept from the hour of trial, it says in Revelation 3. And then it says we're to come for one another with these words. So the point is, you said this is what we're looking forward to. This is the blessed hope for the church age. So that's the good news. But that does not mean that the crazy things that are going on right now, and there could actually be some other prophecies that happen during the church age. They're called pre-tribulation prophecies. I have a DVD out called the Pre-Tribulation Prophecies. So, like in Iran, there could be things going on with Iran and the destruction of Damascus and Syria. These are all prophecies. And so, while yes, we're waiting for Jesus to come, that would end the church age, but that does not end the days left on the earth.
Exactly. Yeah, and the trials and tribulations that come ahead, God is faithful to be there with us as the good shepherd, that though we walk through the valley of the shadow of death, it will not harm us. I mean, it's a shadow. It is not something that could impact us, but this is why we stay near to God. And I want to go back to what you said earlier, and this comes out in Ezekiel time and time again, that they will know that I am God. We have a postmodern culture that questions the existence of God. And of course, this has happened in history, and those that lived that part of history paid a harsh price because they found out the hard way in much the same way like gravity. Gravity does exist, and you doubt it until you get on the roof and fall off the roof and hit the ground, and it gets very painful, and you go, oh I guess I better read that memo to myself that gravity does exist. And people are going to find out, and are finding out the hard way, that God is real, the same yesterday, today, and forever. And he is clear about making that known, and he has done that several times. He has intervened in history to let people know that he is not some cosmic wonder that is not participating in the events of man, right?
Exactly. So when we talked about the Ezekiel 38, that battle that's going to be won by the Lord, fought by the Lord on behalf of Israel's survival, we talked about this great earthquake. It says also that I will bring pestilence and bloodshed. I will rain down on Russia, the troops and the hordes of Gog. It's called Gog and Magog invasion. Gog would be the leader of the invasion, a Russian leader. And there'll be great hailstones, fire, and brimstone. It's going to be clear to the onlookers watching this on CNN and Fox News and stuff that was God. That was a supernatural defeat. And he goes on to say in Ezekiel 39:7 that's when I'll make my holy name will be known, and the nation shall know I'm the Lord. But the point is, that doesn't mean they'll know something supernatural happened. They'll know that God, the God of the Jews, did that. But that doesn't mean they're all going to jump on the Jesus train, and that's the sad thing. They'll be blatantly aware of the fact that there's a supernatural thing going on here now, and that supernatural thing starts to turn the time clock in a whole different direction too, because it says even after the rapture of the church, which probably could happen before Ezekiel 38. Some of us wonder about that. That Satan will, in Second Thessalonians 2, it says that at that point Satan will no longer be restrained to put forward all deception, signs, and lying wonders to reveal the lawless one, the Antichrist. So there's a turn going to go now in the supernatural here real soon with respect to the Ezekiel 38 invasion, and then ultimately after the rapture, the signs and lying wonders that Satan will be able to do being unrestrained. So the world is headed for a deep plunge with respects to what's going to happen according to biblical prophecies. Like you said, it's 1,000% that this is going to happen. And so that's why we're telling people now, and I'm glad you brought up Billy Graham at the beginning of this segment, We're telling people now you need to understand that Jesus Christ is the way, the truth, and the life, and you need to come to Him before all these things start to happen, because He's going to come get us and rapture us out of here real soon.
Mm-hmm. Bill, what is Israel's concern, speaking of Israel, about Russia's invasion of Ukraine?
Well, that's a good point, too, because they're watching this very closely. I mentioned earlier there's thousands of Jews there. Some people estimate there could be even a couple 100,000. Lower estimates are about 40,000. It's hard to know exactly. But what's happening meanwhile is Russia is battle-testing weapons that can be exported to Syria. And Israel's very concerned about that. They're trying out new ballistic missiles and things like that. Russia also does not approve of Israeli airstrikes in Syria, which have been going on ever since the Syrian Revolution. They're trying to stop the flow of weapons from Iran through Syria into Hezbollah's hands. And meanwhile, Hezbollah, to the north of Israel and Lebanon, has about 150,000 missiles pointed at Israel. Some of them are precision-guided. Russia has also denied Israel sovereignty over the Golan Heights, which is a strategic place for Israel between Syria and Israel itself. Now, Donald Trump acknowledged the Golan Heights, Israel's sovereignty over the Golan Heights, but Russia is denying that. And also, probably the main thing, the inactions of the Western world and intervening with Ukraine, fighting against Russia, it promotes other nefarious actors like Iran and its proxies to attack Israel. I think Israel's real concern now is the elephant in the room, and that's Iran. Mm-hmm. And you're starting to see all kinds of other nefarious actors acting up with Syria and Hezbollah, Hamas, but also Saudi Arabia and the UAE, and they're also getting very, very concerned with respect to what's going on with America's inactivity. The West is in action toward what's going on with Ukraine. They're watching this. They're watching the pull out of the careless withdrawal out of Afghanistan. They're watching our inactivity with the Russian invasion of Ukraine, and the whole geopolitical involvement in the Middle East is shifting right now.
Exactly.
Saudi Arabia is talking to China. UAE is talking to Iran. Saudi Arabia is talking to Iran. I mean, these are things that you wouldn't have imagined during Donald Trump's tenure.
I mean, here we were during Donald Trump's. We had 4 Arab nations ready to come to the peace table with Israel, and of course that vapored as soon as Joe Biden was elected president.
Well, in 2020, in August you had the UAE came on the Abraham Accords. A month later, in September, you had Bahrain. A month later, you had Sudan. And in December 2020, you had Morocco. And Donald Trump had high hopes that more countries would come on board. But now, instead of more countries coming on board, these countries of the Abraham Accord are looking in other directions.
Without a doubt.
Security.
Yeah. Well, this is what happens when American leadership is left vacant. And we're not fooling anybody. We're seeing it here domestically, and we're embarrassed by the leadership of America. And meanwhile, our allies that Marco Rubio so brilliantly framed no longer trust us, and our enemies no longer fear us. And that statement is resounding louder as each day continues in this Biden administration right now. So we'll talk more about it with Bill Salas, the prophecy expert, who is here with us on BillMartinezLive.com. We're coming on just about 29 minutes after the top of the hour. More from Bill after this. Martinez back with you. Bill Salas continues with us, the best-selling author of the Millennium Prophecies and the New Jerusalem, renowned prophecy expert. Bill, part of the challenge that I've had in the audience has heard me say this before, in praying for Ukraine and the events that are happening. My first thought as I was praying to God about Ukraine and Russia was that I didn't want to be like Peter. Here Peter hears that Jesus has got to go to the cross to fulfill his God-given ordination and sanctification for the salvation of man. And Jesus says, "Get behind me, Satan." And so that drew caution, for me immediately in my prayer, that I had to pray, God's will be done. His kingdom, his will is being done. And this is what we need to really apprehend here, is that God's will be done no matter what. And that is the higher calling. Yes, we see people being murdered. We see the human carnage, the disgust of humanity at its lowest levels. Just in Russia, of course, we hear what's going on with the Uyghurs in East Turkestan, communist China. Yeah, I mean, on and on. Throughout the world, the inhumane treatment of God's creation has just got to be so grievous to God. But again, for just a moment, understand that this isn't happening outside of God's purview, outside of God's will. It's not like all of a sudden, as you said, Bill, he woke up and said, "Oy vey, what are these knuckleheads up to now?" Right? Because we're on a divine plan, much more holy and righteous than what the Blues Brothers were experiencing and talking about in terms of a mission from God. There is a mission from God, and it's up to us to be aligned with it and to be obedient to said mission, right?
Absolutely. God says to Isaiah chapter 46, verse 9, that I am God, there is no other. I am God, there is none like me, declaring the end from the beginning and things that have not yet come. God is aware of everything that is going to happen on the Earth's timeline, even the things yet forthcoming. He was aware Russia would invade Ukraine. There are certain things in the Bible, the prophecies, that he feels are most significant and require the most, that he informs us about these prophecies, like Ezekiel 38 and the rebirth of Israel in 1948, etc. But he's not caught off guard by anything. And you have two parallel kingdoms going on in this world. One is the kingdom of God, which is acting with the Holy Spirit and dwelling in the church. It's living side by side with this evil empire called the secular world that has no knowledge of God, and man's wrath comes out against himself. You're saying Russia's invasion of Ukraine. This is not God's wrath. This is man's wrath against man. Now, time is going to come after the rapture where God will pour out his wrath on man, and there'll be a series of 21 judgments in the book of Revelation: 7 seal judgments, 7 trumpet judgments, followed by 7 bowl judgments, and this world will be destroyed. And through the series of those judgments. And so, God is trying to, we're still on the earth right now, the church age. We still have the ability to come in the age of grace to God through our confession of our faith in Jesus Christ. If we believe in our hearts that God raised him from the dead and confess him with our lips, we shall be saved. And
that's Bill, that's the objective. People need to understand that's what's key. That's what this is all about, that we confess Jesus as Lord. It's not about the continuation of America or the presidency of Joe Biden, the eradication of Russia. That's not what this is about. That is, as you said, that is that parallel world that has nothing to do that which is righteous and holy. I mean, it's like the globalist movement. The globalist movement is a one world government. That's the fake one world government. And Satan always... he's always trying to steal away, God's glory. And we will eventually have a one world government. The one world government that we all want is the one with the Lord of Lords and the King of Kings reigning, right?
Absolutely. And it's an individual situation. God's looking for a personal relationship with his creation. Every one of his individuals. God so loved the world, the whole world, that he sent his only begotten Son, Jesus Christ, that whoever believes in him will not perish but have everlasting life. Revelation tells us that Jesus stands outside the door knocking, that who would ever open to him in a relationship, he would come in and sup with them and have a relationship with them. So it's an individual thing. It's not about a religion. It's not, it's a personal relationship that you've got with Jesus Christ, that I've got with Jesus Christ, and his believers have with him individually as well.
Yes. Well, again, I appreciate you bringing that out, but, it's key that we appreciate that there is a parallel that's going on. We've got a righteous parallel that God is leading, that is consistent with his will and plan for his creation. And then you have Satan coming in, the evil one, manifesting and trying to steal away God's glory. I mean, Satan will have his holy trinity, right, in the end days. This is all part of the Antichrist, the beast. He has his own trinity, which is a fake trinity. It is not the legitimate, because that's what evil does. It precedes the righteous, and that's what we need to be careful and discerning of, because as Jesus warned that, and the Bible warns us that even God's elect may not be deceived, right?
Right, and especially when those things happen that you're talking about, when Satan is no longer restrained to promote, reveal the Antichrist, his seed, they call it his seed in Genesis 3, and the Antichrist will have a false prophet alongside. It'll be the unholy trinity. It'll be counterfeit. Counterfeit God would be Satan. Counterfeit Messiah would be the Antichrist. Counterfeit Holy Spirit would be the false prophet, so to speak. They're coming, and when they come, they're going to control the whole world. And they're going to be deceiving people, and they're going to be forcing themselves upon people. So the supernatural deception is going to convince, could even deceive the elect. That's the warning there. It's going to be so powerful that the world's going to go, yeah, we love these guys. We love this Antichrist. We're going to follow this guy, and he's going to force them. They won't be able to buy or sell unless they take his mark upon their right hand or upon their forehead. Matter of fact, they're already doing implants in America. Where you can buy now with a chip inside of your hand. It just started coming out with recent headlines.
They've got that installed where companies can go and operate their fax machines or their copiers and that they do it with with a biometric device installed in their hands. I mean, so the technology is already there, and of course we see the other conditioning that's been taking place as a result of COVID. Thought in a million years who would how would a free nation surrender its liberties, its God-given liberties, and allow itself to be locked down, for its economy to be ravaged. And you see what Joe Biden is doing in the name of green energy, choking down our economy, our oil resources, allowing gas to increase in per dollar amounts, and it's just unbelievable what's going on. But it's all preconditioning, isn't it, Bill? I mean, it tells us we're not that far away in the actuation of what the Bible says could be coming.
Well, right, and so the one of the deep signs of the end times that shows us how far down the timeline we are at the end of the timeline. The first super sign was the rebirth of the nation of Israel in 1948. But now everybody's saying the super signs are that all the end time signs are converging. So I just talked about the microchip thing. Revelation 13 talks about no one will buy or sell unless they have this mark upon their right hand or upon their forehead, which identifies them in relationship with the Antichrist. You can't even get that mark unless you agree to worship him and follow him. But here's Money Matters came out with an article just recently in April 18th. New microchip implant lets you pay with a swipe of your hand, and it goes on to say, the future is here. Those tired of taking out their wallet or phone to pay for the things could skip this step entirely with this implantable chip. So it's already in motion.
Right, exactly. And we've been seeing this technology evolve, and here we are conditioned. And as I said, even businesses are being forced to comport to these governmental powers. If not, they don't have access to money. Their banks are being told, for example, in the oil industry, not to do anything with organizations that are promoting the development of fossil fuels, right?
Absolutely. And speaking of money, we need to talk about the shift from Saudi Arabia from the petrodollar. And
exactly. I'll tell you what, we'll do that. We'll do that in the next segment, and that'll be our final segment with Bill Salas. Stay with us.
Right here, right now. Bill Martinez.
Bill Salas, I can't imagine a better way to conclude this final segment than with Danny Goki's song that we just haven't seen it, Not to Lose Hope, because God is the source of our hope. He's the only one that we can trust. And our hope and prayer for this hour is that, those of you who have been wondering, what is going on with Ukraine and Russia, the manifestations of evil in this world right now, what is happening with America? Are these the last of the last days? And if so, how should we be prepared? And as Bill Salas has said earlier, the number one step you can do is be right with God. As God told Cain in that incredible statement that echoes through the millennia, that if you do right, will it not go well for you? And this is what God is calling us to do that which is right. And it's right not by human standard. It's right by God's standard, that which is righteous and holy, that reflects a holy and righteous God who also has to judge evil. And judgment is coming soon and very soon, because we know by experience, Bill Salas, right now, that what we are experiencing here in America and around the world is unsustainable. This cannot continue at this pace and at this trajectory, lest, as the Bible says, that all of God's creation would be destroyed, right?
Absolutely, and the world there's going to be a one world order. This is also biblical prophecy. So we see this move toward globalism, the ruse of climate change and this sort of thing, global warming. We see that we now have a socialist administration leading in that direction. To me, this is just another sign of the end times that we're moving in the direction of this one world order. The point is, with Bible prophecies, they're not given to us by God to scare us, but to equip us for the days in which we live, to authenticate His sovereignty. And like in the case of Noah, who heard there'd be a flood, or Joseph, who heard there'd be 7 years of famine, they moved ahead and advanced with that information, and it saved lives. It saved the posterity of their family.
Exactly.
It also can save souls, as it did in my case, while attending Bible studies held by Chuck Missler on the Book of Revelation. And you and I the late Chuck Missler, was a great prophecy teacher. I came to know the Lord through Bible prophecy. So, this information is given to us from a loving God who wants us to know what's coming, because He cares for us, not to impress us, but to inform us, Bill.
Mm-hmm. Let's talk about the world economy and what's going on. This is really key right now. These are the things of this world that are so temporal that ultimately we will realize matters so little. But it's going to be a bit of a challenge, because we've been conditioned, Bill Salas, to count on the American dollar, to account on the, really, as the Bible would make reference of, to count the, and to hold to high import those things that really are Babylonian, right?
Right. Well, the U.S. dollar has been the money standard for so long, and within that, the petrodollar aspect of it, when the standard of gold was going away, America wisely got involved with the petrodollar. So in other words, you buy OPEC oil through the U.S. dollar. But now Saudi Arabia, who's a key OPEC player, is trying to ditch the dollar. This is very serious. They're in active talks with China directly, trying to consider the yen now as the petro yen versus the petrodollar. Now, this is going to be terrible for the U.S. dollar if this comes to fruition. And Saudi Arabia in itself is turning away from the Biden administration. As a headline just came out on April 20th from Business Insider, Mohammed bin Salman, one of the head guys of Saudi Arabia, the prince, threatened to move Saudi Arabia closer to Russia and China to punish Biden for ostracizing him. And what he's talking about there is that since coming to power, Biden has been distancing himself from the kingdom. This is inside of this article. He's criticized Saudi Arabia for human rights abuses, the war they're leading in Yemen against the Houthis.
And of course, the killing of the journalist as well.
That's right. And they sanctioned dozens of Saudis who believed to be playing a key role in the Khashoggi murder. So, the tables are turning. The geopolitical events are shaping a whole different world right now.
Bill, we got about 6 minutes left here, and I want to talk about the JCPOA talks, Iran's nuclear program, and, as you and I have discussed before, Israel's reaction to Iran's nuclear ambitions.
Right. Well, Israel's watching Ukraine closely, but they're really watching Iran much, much closer, and they're watching these Vienna talks. They've gone for 8 rounds now. They started in early 2021. They're stalled. They're really not going anywhere. Iran is not interested in rolling back its advances in its nuclear program. So let's just do a real quick little look back here. In 2018, Donald Trump stepped away from the JCPOA. He withdrew America out of it. And since that time, in 2020, Iran enriched uranium 10 times its limit to 2.5 tons on the JCPOA. It began in 2021 enriching uranium to 20%. It was only supposed to be capped off around 3.5%. It rolled out in January of 2021, 1,000 additional advanced centrifuges. But in November of 2021, Iran boasted that it could stockpile 60% enriched uranium, Bill. So the point is, Israel is very concerned because when you get to 60% uranium, which they're boasting they are already able to do, it's a stone's throw away to get to 90% and a nuclear weapon. Meanwhile, Iran has got ballistic missiles that can get to Israel in 8 minutes. And they're prepared, and they want to wipe Israel off the map. I mean, they've made it real clear that Israel is a cancerous tumor, according to their Ayatollah Khomeini. So Israel is watching this very closely, and they've said, Naftali Bennett, the Prime Minister of Israel, said, we will not be bound by whatever the JCPOA outcome is. But what's going on basically is that Iran just wants to have their sanctions removed and continue to have not roll back all these advances they've made. And this is a no-win situation for Israel.
And the thing that's so confusing about this is going back to the Obama administration, the reason that it entered into the JCPOA talks to begin with and negotiate the deal with Iran was, Obama told us, so that Iran would never have a nuclear weapon, which everything said that they would have a nuclear weapon. And Joe Biden continues to echo that same lie.
Well, you know, it's interesting because Leon Panetta, the Secretary of Defense back in 2012, I believe it was saying at that time he thought Israel would attack Iran because their nuclear program was so advancing so much at that time. Matter of fact, just in August of 2014, almost a year before the JCPOA was implemented in July of 2015, John Kerry, who was leading diplomatic relationships on the JCPOA, he said Iran is at a 2-month nuclear weapon breakout. So in other words, back in 2014, there was concerns Iran was just 2 months away from having a nuclear weapon. So, right. You know, we're in 2022 now, and Iran is putting uranium enriching up to 60%. So they've fast-forwarded to a point where they're going to be a nuclear power if they're not already one.
Exactly. Well, you know, that's my next question, is how reliable are these numbers that we're talking about? I mean, the difference between 60 and 90, I mean, they could be doing something because it's not like they're allowing, you know, the international community to come in and inspect, right?
No, they've since the withdrawal from Donald Trump in 2018, they've not had those kind of inspections on a regular basis, and they're hiding things. And
well, those inspections were a bunch of, you know, that was a bunch of bunk anyway, because they were hiding stuff. They were playing, hide the pea. As inspectors were coming in, so they weren't really genuine anyway. So we're fooling ourselves into thinking that we were getting any kind of credible information, you know, from Iran regarding their nuclear development.
Absolutely, and basically, I think what we're looking at here is probably another Bible prophecy in the making, which is a prophecy dealing with Iran. It looks like to be a nuclear prophecy. I personally think someone's about to attack Iran. Might be Israel, they're prepared to. Could be in a prophecy in Jeremiah chapter 49 dealing with ancient Elam, which is the west coast of Iran by the Persian Gulf. It talks about a prophecy where Iran gets attacked, and it appears to be a nuclear disaster that comes out of. They've got nuclear power plants over there, the Bushehr nuclear reactor right there. Right. It's the closest place for Iran to attack Israel with their ballistic missiles. They've got underground silos, portable missile launchers already stationed there. So I've got a book on this called The Nuclear Showdown in Iran, revealing the ancient prophecy of Elam. We don't have time to talk about this prophecy very much, but I think we're going to see an invasion, an attack, probably led by Israel. I think it'll fulfill a prophecy in Jeremiah 49 of Iran, and Iran is going to come back at Israel with a proxy war because you got Hezbollah as a proxy of Iran with 150,000 missiles. You got Syria with chemical weapons. They used chemical weapons over 300 times in the revolution, the Syrian revolution. You got Hamas, who's always itchy to, lob missiles into Israel. You got the Houthis now down below in Yemen saying they get precision-guided missiles from Iran. They could actually hit Tel Aviv. We're looking at a Middle East that's going to explode, in my estimation, in the very near future. And I believe this all happens before Ezekiel 38, which we talked about at the beginning of the show.
This is all a powder keg, isn't it, Bill? I mean, just waiting for, something to set it off. And again, we're reminded that God is in control. This is not by any surprise. So it's up to us to align ourselves with God's will to be done, right? I mean, this is the bottom line of all this and the benefit of prophecy, as you said, God is telling us in advance what's going to happen so that we can, be assured that we're on the winning team here, so to speak.
These are the days when you need to have your Bible open on your left hand and your newspaper or your news source
yes.
on your right hand. And you need to marry up the things that are going on with what God said would happen, because there's all stage setting right now, Bill.
Bill, 10 seconds. How can people be in touch?
They can visit me at my website, prophecydepot.com. That's prophecydepot, like homedepot.com. I've got products there. I've got lots of articles and TV shows on that website. So come visit me there.